I never thought the taste of red wine could turn bitter on my tongue. Margo sat across from me at the dimly lit restaurant, her manicured fingers delicately wrapped around the stem of her glass. She swirled the deep crimson liquid absent-mindedly, her lips curled into a small, unreadable smile. I should have noticed something was off the moment we sat down. She was different, lighter. There was an ease in her posture, a casual glow on her face that I hadn't seen in years. But I brushed it off, thinking maybe she was just in a good mood. Maybe the stress of work had lifted, or she had finally taken that yoga class she always talked about. Then, just as I took a sip of my wine, she said it. I need to tell you something, but promise me you won't freak out. I froze, the glass still pressed to my lips. The candle between us flickered, casting shadows over her smooth skin. I set the glass down carefully, wiping my hands on the napkin in my lap. All right, I said, keeping my voice even. What is it? Margo let out a small breath, like she was about to confess to spending too much on a shopping spree. But then, her next words sliced through the air, cold and effortless. I've been seeing someone else. It took a second for my brain to process what she had just said. The words sat there, hanging between us like a loose thread waiting to be pulled. My stomach tightened, my heartbeat slowing into something thick and heavy. You, what? My voice barely made it past my throat. She didn't flinch. She didn't backtrack. Instead, she leaned forward slightly, her gaze locked onto mine as if this were just another conversation over dinner. I want to talk to you about it because I think it's something we should explore together. You know, to keep things exciting. My skin prickled, a slow wave of disbelief washing over me. Exciting. She said it like she was suggesting a new restaurant. Like she wasn't just telling me that our marriage, our commitment, was suddenly open for business. I stared at her, searching for a hint of guilt, some flicker of regret. But all I saw was expectation, as if she was waiting for me to nod, to agree, to tell her this was some grand, modern idea I was totally on board with. I didn't. Instead, I set my napkin down, pushed my chair back, and let out a slow, measured breath. You know what, Margo? I said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. Her brows lifted slightly, waiting. I think I lost my appetite. And with that, I stood up and walked away, leaving her sitting there, confused, wine glass in hand, completely unprepared for what was about to come next. The night air outside the restaurant felt too crisp, too sharp, like a slap of reality against my skin. I walked away without looking back, my head buzzing, my chest tight. My feet carried me without direction, without thought. I just needed to move, to get away from the candlelit table where my wife had just set fire to my entire world. Margo had cheated. And not only that, she expected me to be okay with it. To be a willing participant in her betrayal, as if it were just some adventurous experiment to spice things up. The sheer absurdity of it made my stomach churn. I had always prided myself on being a calm, rational man. The kind of guy who didn't let emotions get the best of him. But this was different. This was personal. After walking aimlessly for what felt like hours, I found myself standing in front of our house. Our house. The place we had built together, filled with memories that suddenly felt tainted. I hesitated before going inside, my fingers tightening around my keys. I didn't know what I was expecting, but when I opened the door, I found Margo already there. She was sitting on the couch, one leg tucked under the other, sipping from a glass of wine as if she hadn't just detonated our marriage at dinner. Her eyes flicked up when she saw me. You left so suddenly, she said, her voice light, almost amused. I wasn't done talking. My blood ran cold. I shut the door behind me, slow and deliberate. I think you said plenty. She tilted her head. I didn't mean to upset you, but I really think you're overreacting. Relationships evolve, Owen. People evolve. Monogamy is such an outdated concept, don't you think? I let out a short, humorless laugh. Oh, that's rich. You don't believe in monogamy? That's interesting, because when we got married, I'm pretty sure we both took vows. Remember those? Or were you just repeating words for fun? She sighed, setting her glass down. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. Margo, you told me, over dinner, that you have a lover, like you were telling me you tried a new yoga class. And now you expect me to just, what? Join in? Applaud you for your bravery? She rolled her eyes. I was hoping you'd be open-minded. I thought you'd at least consider it before storming out like a drama queen. Something in me snapped. Is that what I am? A drama queen? You tell me you've been cheating, and I'm the one being dramatic? She huffed, brushing a hand through her auburn hair. It's not cheating if I'm being honest about it. I didn't lie to you, Owen. I came to you like an adult, and I expected you to act like one." Her arrogance stunned me. "Who is he?" I asked suddenly. That made her pause. "What? Who is he, Margo?" My voice was sharp, my patience non-existent. "If this is all so harmless, if you're being so honest, then say his name. Or is this where your honesty suddenly dries up?" She hesitated. My stomach twisted. I knew that look. That split-second flicker of uncertainty. She wasn't expecting this level of pushback. "It's no one you know." The way she said it made my skin crawl. I took a slow step closer. "No one I know? That's interesting. Because if he were some random stranger, you wouldn't be hesitating like this. So, let's try again. Who is he?" Her jaw clenched. I could see the wheels turning in her head, scrambling for a way to regain control of the conversation. "It doesn't matter," she said, her voice tight. "You're focusing on the wrong thing, Owen." "Oh, I think I'm focusing on exactly the right thing." I watched her carefully. Every inch of her body language screamed discomfort, and for the first time, real nerves. And then, like a bolt of lightning, it hit me. I knew. I knew who it was. And the moment the realization settled in, my blood ran ice cold. The realization hit me like a slow-moving car crash, inevitable, drawn out, and impossible to stop. Margo wasn't just hesitating. She was hiding something. And if I knew anything about her, it was that she only got cagey when she was afraid of the truth coming out. I stared at her, at the way her fingers drummed against her wine glass, the way she avoided my eyes just long enough to make it obvious. "It's someone I know, isn't it?" My voice was quieter now, but the weight behind it was enough to make her shift in her seat. "Owen, please." I laughed under my breath, running a hand down my face. "Oh, this is good. This is so good. You sit there talking about honesty like you're some kind of saint, but the second I ask for a name, you freeze up." She crossed her arms. "Because the name doesn't matter. You're focusing on the who instead of the why. That's why we're never going to have a productive conversation about this." "A productive conversation?" "Margo, you told me you've been seeing another man like you were ordering dessert. Now you're dancing around his name like a guilty teenager sneaking in past curfew. So forgive me if I don't care about having a productive conversation." She exhaled sharply, then stood up, pacing. That was another tell of hers. When she needed to create distance, she moved. It was like she thought that a few feet of space could physically separate her from her own guilt. "Fine," she said, tossing her hands up. "You want a name? It's Drew. There. Are you happy? Drew." The name alone was enough to send a fresh wave of nausea rolling through me. I felt like I had been pushed into freezing water, my body reacting before my mind could even process the impact. "Drew," I repeated slowly. She swallowed hard. "Yes." I let out a sharp breath, nodding. "Drew," I said again, just to make sure I wasn't imagining things. "As in my friend Drew." Silence. And that was all the confirmation I needed. I took a step back, a hollow feeling growing in my chest. "Unbelievable," I muttered, shaking my head. "You cheated on me, and you did it with him? You actually went behind my back with someone I trusted?" "It wasn't like that." "Don't." I held up a hand. "Do not insult me by acting like this is something other than exactly what it is. You lied. You betrayed me. And now you expect me to just what? Accept it." Margot's lips parted like she had a dozen arguments lined up, but for once, she didn't say anything. And that was the moment I knew. This wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It wasn't some impulsive decision she regretted. This was deliberate. She had planned this. She had chosen this. And the worst part? She had convinced herself that I was the unreasonable one for not embracing it. I let out a dry chuckle, rubbing my temples. Wow. Just wow. You know, for years, I told myself that even on our worst days, you'd never be capable of this. And yet, here we are. Margo exhaled, frustrated. "Owen, I never wanted to hurt you. You just what, Margo? Thought you could play house with me while sneaking around with him? Thought I'd be too stupid to notice? Or did you just assume I'd be fine with you sleeping with my friend because you talked to me about it first?" She pursed her lips. "I was hoping you'd be open-minded. That did it. That was the moment I felt the last thread of patience snap. You really don't get it, do you?" I took a step closer, staring straight into her eyes. "You didn't ask me, Margo. You didn't discuss this with me. You informed me, like you were giving me a weather update. You treated me like an obstacle instead of a partner. So don't stand there and act like you gave me a choice. Because you didn't." For the first time that night, she looked genuinely unsettled. "Good. Because for the first time that night, I felt clear. I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't grasping for answers or wondering where things had gone wrong. I knew. And now? Now, it was my turn to make a choice. I stood there, staring at Margo as the weight of her betrayal settled in. The woman I had built a life with, shared every dream, every fear, every quiet moment of trust. She wasn't the same person I had married. Or maybe, just maybe, she had always been this person, and I was just too blind to see it. Drew. The name still felt like venom in my mouth. My so-called friend. The guy who used to crash on our couch after late nights, who came to our wedding and toasted to our future, who once told me, "I'd never do anything to mess up what you two have." What a joke. And the worst part? Margo sat there, arms crossed, a flicker of irritation in her eyes like I was the one being unreasonable. Like she was waiting for me to get over it already so we could move on. I exhaled sharply and pinched the bridge of my nose, willing myself not to snap. "Okay," I finally said, my voice even steady. "Let's do this. Let's lay everything out on the table." "How long?" Margo blinked. "What? How long? Have you been sleeping with him?" She hesitated. And that told me everything I needed to know. "Margo." My tone dropped, sharper now. "Be honest. If honesty is so important to you, then answer the damn question." She swallowed, then looked away. "A few months." I felt my pulse slow, my body turning ice cold. "Months." She nodded. I let out a bitter chuckle. "Wow. So all those nights you were working late, all those last-minute girls' nights that I didn't question, you were with him." She flinched, but didn't deny it. That was enough. I took a step back, nodding to myself. "And tell me, Margo, did Drew's wife get the same honesty talk? Or is she still in the dark?" Her face paled. I tilted my head. "Oh, so she doesn't know." Silence. That was the final nail in the coffin. I had spent this whole conversation waiting for some kind of reason, some excuse, some anything to explain how the woman I married had turned into this. But there wasn't one. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't ashamed. She just didn't want to deal with the consequences. I let out a slow breath, my hands loosening at my sides. "All right." She frowned. "All right." I met her gaze, my expression unreadable. "Yeah, all right." And then, without another word, I walked upstairs, leaving her sitting there. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just left. Because right then, I realized something. Margo expected me to react. She wanted a fight, a dramatic, emotional explosion that would put us right back into another cycle of hurt and healing. But I wasn't going to give her that. No, I had something better in mind. I locked the bedroom door behind me, not because I thought Margo would try to follow me, but because I needed to shut her out. Physically, mentally, emotionally. My hands rested against the dresser as I took a slow breath, my mind moving faster than it ever had before. Every memory I had with her, the late-night talks, the road trips, the mornings where she used to steal the covers, felt like a cruel joke now. A carefully crafted illusion that had just been shattered beyond repair. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. I turned to the closet and grabbed my suitcase, throwing it open on the bed. If she wanted Drew, she could have him. But what she wasn't going to have? Me. The sound of the zipper echoed in the room as I started packing. Clothes, shoes, my laptop, the essentials. I wasn't sure where I was going yet, but I knew I wasn't staying here. Not in this house. Not with her. A knock at the door. "Owen." I didn't answer. "Come on." Margo sighed from the other side. "Can we just talk?" I kept packing. "You can't seriously be mad forever," she pressed. "This is ridiculous. We're adults, Owen. We can work through this." I nearly laughed. Work through this? She still didn't get it. This wasn't a rough patch. This wasn't some misunderstanding we could smooth over. This was a choice she had made, over and over again. And now, she was dealing with the fallout of it. "You can talk to yourself all you want," I said, my voice even. "But I don't have anything left to say to you." Silence. Then, after a long moment, she scoffed. "Oh, so that's it? You're just gonna run away?" I zipped up the suitcase and slung it over my shoulder before unlocking the door. Margo took a step back when she saw me. Her eyes flicked down to the suitcase, then back to my face, her confidence faltering. "Wait, you're actually leaving?" I stared at her. "What did you think was going to happen, Margo?" Her mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time tonight, she was the one caught off guard. She was the one scrambling for control. And it felt good. I stepped past her, walking down the stairs without another glance. She followed. Owen, stop. You're being dramatic. I turned on my heel so fast she nearly crashed into me. You do not get to call me dramatic, I said sharply. Not after what you did. Her jaw clenched. So what, she snapped. You're gonna leave me here alone? Just like that. You weren't alone when you were sleeping with Drew? I shot back. You'll be fine. She flinched. Good. I grabbed my keys and opened the door. The cold night air rushed in, wrapping around me like a long overdue reality check. This was it. This was the moment I took my life back. Goodbye, Margo. And then, without another word, I walked out, leaving her standing there, stunned, as the door clicked shut behind me. The night swallowed me whole the moment I stepped outside. The air was sharp, crisp against my skin, but I barely felt it. My mind was too busy replaying everything that had just happened. I threw my suitcase into the trunk of my car and slid into the driver's seat, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The engine hummed to life, headlights cutting through the darkness. I had no destination, no plan, just the overwhelming need to move. As I pulled onto the road, my phone buzzed on the passenger seat. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Margo. I ignored it. Then another buzz. And another. A text. Then a call. Then another. I exhaled sharply, jaw clenching as I reached for the phone at a red light. The screen lit up with message after message. Margo. Owen, come back. We need to talk. Margo. This isn't the way to handle this. Margo, you're being unfair. I let out a bitter laugh. Unfair? She cheats. She lies. And I'm the unfair one. The light turned green, and I tossed the phone back onto the seat. She could scream into the void all she wanted. I wasn't listening anymore. I drove. Past the quiet suburbs. Past the familiar coffee shop where we used to spend lazy Sunday mornings. Past the park where we once talked about baby names we'd never use now. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I needed to get as far away from that house, from her, as possible. An hour passed. Then two. The city lights faded into stretches of empty road, the glow of the dashboard casting eerie shadows over my hands. And then, somewhere along a quiet highway, it hit me. I was free. Not in the way I ever wanted to be. Not in a way that felt good, but in a way that was real. For the first time in years, I wasn't compromising. I wasn't waiting for Margo to change, to wake up and realize what she had, to love me the way I had loved her. No, this was my story now, and it was time to decide how it ended. The highway stretched endlessly before me, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the dark. The hum of the tires against the road was the only sound keeping me company, aside from the occasional vibration of my phone. I hadn't checked it since I left. I didn't need to. I already knew Margo wasn't the type to give up easily. She would call. She would text. She would leave voicemails dripping with just the right mix of guilt and exasperation, as if I was the one who had done something wrong, as if I was the one who needed to explain myself. But she didn't realize something. I wasn't explaining myself to her ever again. My gas tank was running low, so I pulled off the highway into a sleepy little town I didn't recognize. It was the kind of place with a single main road lined with mom-and-pop shops, where the gas station doubled as a convenience store and the people behind the counter actually looked you in the eye. I filled up my car, grabbed a coffee inside, and sat at one of the plastic booths near the window. The overhead fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, casting everything in a dull yellow glow. As I stirred a packet of sugar into my cup, my mind finally started catching up with the reality of what had happened. I had walked out. I had left behind everything. Our house, our bed, our carefully curated life. The man I was this morning was gone, and in his place was someone new. Someone who had no idea what came next. And for the first time in my life, I was okay with that. I pulled out my phone. 22 missed calls. A string of unread messages. I scrolled past them until I reached his name. Drew. I hadn't texted him in weeks, not since things had started feeling off. Not since Margo had started pulling away, making excuses, smiling at her phone a little too much. I clicked on our last conversation. It was short, just a back and forth about grabbing drinks soon. A pit settled in my stomach. How long had he been laughing behind my back? My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could call him. I could send one message, a single sentence that would make him squirm. But then I realized. I didn't need to. I had nothing left to say to him either. Instead, I deleted his number. Margo's too. Gone. I took another sip of coffee, feeling lighter than I had in months. Years, maybe. I didn't know where I was going next. But wherever it was going to be mine. The night stretched on, endless and quiet, as I sat in that small-town diner, my coffee turning lukewarm in my hands. For the first time in a long time, there was nothing tying me down. No weight of expectation, no forced smiles, no pretending. Just me, a car with a full tank of gas, and a life that was suddenly mine again. I thought about Margo, about the version of her I had loved, the woman who once traced circles on my palm when we held hands, who used to hum along to old songs in the kitchen, who used to look at me like I was the only thing that mattered. That version of her was gone. Or maybe, she had never existed at all. I picked up my phone one last time, not to check messages, but to send one final text. To Margo, don't call me again. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. I hit send. Then, without hesitation, I blocked her number. It was over. I took one last sip of my coffee, grabbed my keys, and stepped back out into the cool night air. As I slid into the driver's seat, I felt something strange, something I hadn't felt in months, maybe even years. Relief. I didn't know where the road would take me next. But one thing was certain. Wherever I was headed, it was far, far away from her.